As an instigator and annihilator of life, the Linga Purana recognizes Shiva specifically as Father Time, aka Kala. For time creates and destroys all that lives on earth. Myths that recount the origin of Kala are normally found in the Puranas, later myths, but this god makes an occasional appearance in the Vedas and Vedanta as well. Kala first appears in the Atharva Veda. It turns out as a prolific, thousand-eyed steed that commandeers a chariot wheel of time when he embraces the holy fires of the highest Brahma. In this same hymn, Kala is described as an overflowing soma vessel that is lofted into the heavens as the eye of the sun. Kala sees and knows all, and stirs the universe to express the nature of his self, that is, the nature of time, although he himself remains unmoved. Needless to say, all these motifs can be identified collectively as aspects of Soma Pavamana in the Rig Veda, leaving no doubt that Kala time was identified in many ways with the plant of the gods, seen through time. All living forms are predisposed to die, and time is the creator of that predisposition. Particular emphasis is placed on Kala's role as a universal creator and destructor by means of his divine fires, a theme that likely relates to Vedic descriptions of Agni, the god of fire, whose devouring flames spring from lotus plants on the Indus River. The Mahabharata identifies Kala as, collectively, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Hindu Trimurti. But like Brahma, Kala's appearance and role in nature is paradoxically dependent on the creative Maya of Shiva. For Kala is responsible for all births and governs all time cycles in which creatures and lotus flowers proliferate and perish. So Kala, time, is beyond creation, yet when he expresses himself, he is responsible for the flow of delusion, world delusion, samsara. Although Kala, time, has pyrogenic qualities, he originally springs to life from a watery abyss as a dark, umbilical serpent. He awakens in time with bleary lotus eyes, and then becomes a soma-bearing phallus, a lingam of creation. To quote the Linga Purana, he is tamas, darkness, the disintegration of all that is perceived. Shiva is the manifestation of his masculine, Purusha, the sleeping unmanifest substratum. And his female aspect is the equivalent of Prakriti, the wielder of illusion, the Mayan, one who wields Maya. Eternally and transcendently, he is Maha-Kala, great time, and together they are known as lust, Kama. For lust, after all, initiates the process of death, this being a concept that is fundamental to the autobiography of the Buddha and many other Hindu gods. Shiva seems to inherit the ritual role of the Vedic god of fire in one tantric passage, in that the destructor's fires consume Soma, the elixir of immortality. To quote, a male principle is represented as fire, the devourer, the female as Soma, the devoured offering. The androgynoform is the embodiment of the cosmic sacrifice, the image of the universe. Once again, we recognize here the bisexual principles of creation, a theme that we trace from the Upanishads and Vedas in our episodes on those subjects. Or in the context of the human condition, the Shiva Purana declares, a young man will become a feeble, aged man. A powerful man becomes weak, and a rich man will become deprived of prosperity. O fellow Brahmins, The ways of Kala are wonderful. No creatures that live under the spell of Kala's Maya are beyond the laws of karma, for the spell of time leads to rebirth. The god of time, Kala, is classically portrayed as a lion-faced dragon that continuously disgorges and devours simultaneously lotus stems and flowers with his formidable jaws. The twin dragons seen here with Kala faces, lion faces, emerge from a larger progenitor that has the same lion face. All three dragons have the same trailing bodies that are studded with sessile lotus flowers. And these terminate with 3 heads bearing lotus medallions on their hoods or blossoms on their heads. The visual image is consonant with the notion of the Vedic plant god Soma, also a serpent that is occasionally described as having leonine features. And we recall that the plant god Soma also slithers out of his ancient skin as a serpent. The dragon's lion face, when viewed frontally, is called a simhamukha, lion face, and it symbolizes the all-powerful and consumptive face of time, face of Kala. The architectural habit of placing leonine Kala faces above the entrances to Hindu temples in India was taken up by various civilizations in Southeast Asia during the first millennium. This particular image is from Nepal and seems to support a destructive eye of Shiva that naturally embodies the sun, moon, and fire as a lotus flower. Lion-faced dragons that are portrayed simultaneously in frontal and profiled perspectives on the temples at Bante Sre in central Cambodia during the 10th century represent a creator, sustainer, and destroyer of padmakalpas, of lotus cycles, of lotus plants. Since lotus rhizomes are perpetually released and consumed by fluxions of water and fire in Khmer iconography. In this sense, the growth of the serpent stems is identified as both the cause and the effect of the storm god Indra's activities. We recall that Vedic Indra destroys serpent demons with his vajra, his lightning bolt, triple-pronged lightning bolt. And here we see the ancient storm god riding the face of time, while aiming his bolt at the growth of opposing rampant lotus serpents. In Vedic mythology, the theme relates to the mythical dispossession of Soma from the serpents of the deep. Kala's lion face, simhamukha, is also known in the Puranas as Kirti Muka, the face, Muka, of glory, Kirti, or also as Rahu, meaning the Caesar, as in this god being a Caesar of Soma, those titles depending on the context of its appearance in classical Hindu mythology. Rahu is, in fact, a mythic figure that plays the role of an earthbound Ashura when he disguises himself with the aspect of a sun during the churning of Vishnu's milky ocean, such that he can deceptively approach and devour the Soma-filled moon before the Devas can stop him. His deception is not lost to Vishnu, however, who hurls a lotus chakra, the Sudarshana disc, at Rahu to slice off his head. In doing so, Rahu's mouth disgorges an outpouring of Soma juice that is distributed among the sky gods. This is implied here by 5 lotus blossoms that are released from Rahu's mouth. This interpretation is supported by an Orison portrayal of Rahu, the Caesar, as his title implies, of Soma, since he sits on a lotus throne as he consumes the flower's nectar from a crescent moon. The same concept is intimated on a cornerstone of a Balinese temple, which portrays the head of Rahu in the act of consuming a lotus flower, suggesting both the moon and flower contain the nectar of the gods. And similarly, on the Deccan plateau of India, Rahu's severed head is positioned over an overbrimming soma vessel, with a lotus floating on top of the nectar of immortality. These images match closely with another mythic face that goes by the alternative title of Kirti Muka, face of glory. The connection can be drawn on both iconographic and mythic grounds, inasmuch as Rahu actually plays an integral, albeit secondary role, in a popular tale that describes the birth and deification of one of Shiva's creations, or if you will, one of Shiva's incarnations, that of Kirti Muka, the face of glory. In this tale, Rahu is almost devoured by the consumptive fires of Shiva's third eye. But unlike Rahu's encounter with Vishnu, in which he gets his head sliced off, Shiva actually sees fit to spare this god, this Asura, destruction. Once when the famous sage, Narada, was strolling on top of Mount Kailasha, he came across Shiva and his beautiful wife Uma in the middle of a kalpa plant forest. The spectacle of the couple reminded Narada of his close friend Brahma, the four-headed king of the Asuras, and thus inspired him to travel to the realm of Brahma to relate what he had seen on Kailasha peak. Now, Narada's flattering description of Uma's comely appearance made Brahma feel intense desires to possess the wife of Shiva. And so Brahma became sorely deluded by his own passions. The grandsire of the gods called upon an Asura by the name of Rahu, the Caesar of Soma at the great churning of Vishnu's ocean, to ask him to deliver a message to the Lord of Destruction on his behalf. Brahma prepared a note that questioned how or why such a beautiful goddess like Uma could possibly find satisfaction with a naked yogi that haunts cremation grounds. And he suggested that Uma, much better suited for the Lord of Jewels, that being Brahma on his jeweled lotus throne. Rahu dutifully delivered the insulting missive to Shiva, to which the god of destruction responded by producing a frightful demon from his third eye. The raging beast took the form of a Narasimha, a lion man, with an upright body, upstanding hairs, a lion's face, blazing eyes, and a voice that bellowed like a thunderbolt. Rahu immediately recognized that he was in big trouble. So he bowed before Shiva to beg for refuge. Shiva could not deny mercy to a humble messenger, since Rahu had only acted as an emissary for a deluded and desirous god. So Rahu was allowed to depart unscathed. However, the blazing and hungry lion man was left with nothing to eat, and so turned to Shiva to express his need to devour something for his emaciated body. Since Shiva had no food to offer, he commanded the demon to consume his own hands and feet and body. The lion demon obeyed at once, of course, and proceeded to consume his entire body, excepting, of course, his head, which his gnashing jaws could not reach. Shiva was amused and gratified by the demon's act of selflessness, and therefore honored the fiery face by bestowing him the title of Kirti Muka, face of glory, decreeing that this image should be placed above the doorways of temples to remind worshippers that those who are remiss in worshiping the glorious face of Shiva will find that their acts of devotion are for naught. A clearly benevolent and jocular expression is emphasized on portrayals of Kirti Muka on portals that lead to the top of the Javanese Buddhist temple at Borobudur. We note that the lower mandible of the face is missing and that streams of soma and lotus flowers spill from the creature's mouth. And we also observe ascetics gathering around these streams of soma to fill their cups with the nectar of the gods. A similar but massive face assumes the same position over a portal to the nearby Hindu temple of Prambanan in central Java. 5 lotus flowers dangle below the jaw of the consumptive face, while a god assumes the hand gesture of samadhi, signifying yogic trance. We also encounter Javanese images of Rahu on the spouts of yoni stones, this being a massive ritual mortar in which the linga is employed as a pestle to extract the essence of creation from soma stems. This practice seems to intimate that Rahu's cleaved head is spilling forth the nectar of the gods, the residues of which likely filled the cups of priests during soma sacrifices in Indonesian history. On the nearby island of Bali, one observes yet another distinctive portrayal of Kirti Muka. Here the face of glory supports on his head a dawning lotus flower, a full-blown lotus, and ultimately a soma vessel cradled by a lotus perianth, as if to suggest the golden receptacle of the flower is equivalent to the soma receptacles of the sky gods. While Brahma and Vishnu have very attractive and life-engendering female partners in classical Hindu mythology, Shiva has a female aspect that is no less horrifying than the lion man of the Kirti Muka tale. This goddess usually goes by the name of either Kali, the dark one, or Durga, the impassible one. Both of these goddesses have feline features, lion features specifically, and also a destructive, burning third eye that engulfs the sun and moon. Kali's demeanor is decidedly gruesome when she appears on earth as a laughing corpse. She often wears a garland of skulls and drinks the blood of disemboweled humans from their own craniums. Kali is a feminine personification of death. But in such a role, she is also a savior of the world, because she usually destroys arrogant asuras that threaten the welfare of her devotees. The alternative title of Kali is Durga, under which name she typically puts an overambitious earth god in his rightful place, which is to say, under her command. In a popular tale from the Shiva Purana, Shiva and Vishnu combine their energies to create a goddess that is capable of overcoming an unruly asura by the name of Mahisha, his title meaning simply water buffalo. This particular demon, having been born as a buffalo on the banks of the Narada River to a Rakshasa princess, which is to say to a demoness, Mahisha shares the age-old magical powers of a Vedic asura known as Vishvarupa, i.e., the dragon called all forms, in that this wild buffalo is capable of transforming himself through his powers of Maya into various animals. So he has the very well-known Vedic and powerful serpent magic under his spell. This asura had gained control over the sky gods on account of a boon that was granted by Brahma. As a consequence, he is destined to become the victim of his own self-delusions of omnipotence. The tale goes like this. In days of yore, when the king of the Asuras, Mahisha, ruled over the kingdom of heaven and earth, the normal ordained tasks of Surya the sun, Chandra the moon, Varuna the river god, Yama, Indra, Agni, and other sky gods were usurped by the earthbound Asuras. Word of this calamity eventually reached Vishnu and Shiva, and so the great sustainer and destroyer of worlds combined their powers to conjure a blazing splendor that might subdue these devils. A devastating flame poured out of their mouths and transformed itself into the great goddess of destruction known as Durga. All of the sky gods were called together to assist that blazing goddess, and each felt obliged to lend her their favorite weapon. Shiva bequeathed his spear, Krishna his blazing disc, the Sudarshana chakra, Varuna the conch and the noose, Agni his sexual energies, Indra the vajra and bell, and Brahma a water pot that looked like the sun with lustrous hair, while Vishvakarman contributed a lotus blossom. Durga proceeded to pervade the three worlds of the gods with her blaming luster and attacked Mahisha relentlessly. In defense, that water buffalo countered by kicking at the goddess with his hoofs and then striking her with his horns and snout. But Durga, the great Mahisha destroyer, responded with a powerful Maya and bound that hapless demon with the noose of Varuna. Then, with the body of a formidable lioness, she pounced upon the buffalo's back. Mahisha resisted by exercising his own powers of Maya and attempted to outwit the terrible goddess by transforming himself into a massive elephant. But to no avail, because the great goddess was not deceived in the least, and overcame these powers by evoking her own illusions, thereby forcing the king of Asuras to return to his original form as a man. With draughts of her beverage, and with her eyes rolling about in her face that was reddened with inebriation, Durga finally silenced that demon by decapitating Mahisha with her trident. All of the devas rejoiced and bowed before the goddess, recognizing her as the three-eyed cause of the existence and the omnipresent source of universal knowledge. Durga, that lotus-eyed goddess with the energy of the Trinity and a bell and a trident in hand, was acknowledged by all the devas as the illusory exuder of ambrosia. Following custom, the myth of Mahisha's demise is riddled throughout with prehistoric themes relating to a Vedic serpent-slaying event. And per the usual, the inimitable lintels carved from local sandstone at Bante Sre in central Cambodia captures the essence of the tale of Mahisha's demise in compelling detail. Durga wields a flaming vajra to subdue an omniformed Asura with the noose of Varuna, envisioned here as a serpent in a lotus grove. She mounts a lion with her so-called luster of three lights. While transforming herself into a lioness and pouncing upon the buffalo's back, the text informs us that she is empowered by draughts of soma, and ultimately she is recognized as the source of Amrita itself, the source of her devotees' revelations. And note that Durga's dance of death is performed on lotus stems and blossoms, not so unlike the dance of her consort Shiva, the Nataraj. The face of glory, Kirti Muka, bears witness to the scene from above in the presence of celestial lotus blossoms. So Durga embodies here a goddess of destruction and brings the Maya of Brahma and Vishnu under her control with her purifying consumptive fires. The story of Mahisha's destruction includes various members of the Vedic pantheon: Agni, Chandra, Surya, Indra, Varuna, and more, and obviously represents an updated but derived classical version of a Vedic Asura slaying event, which is generally what classical Hindu mythology is all about. And this gives me, of course, as a botanist, reason to assume that the ritual use of the nectar of the gods continued well into the 12th century, both in India and throughout Southeast Asia. Be this the case or not, I think it is fair to say, at this point, that the symbolic image that most frequently exemplifies the gods and cosmogonic themes of the Indo-Aryans from prehistoric times to medieval periods of India is, hands down, the sacred lotus. Essentially, every god of creation is symbolized by this flower, as is every god of destruction, in one way or another. And no other plant shares in this role. As a cosmic eye, cosmic womb, world pillar, world wheel, or even time itself, which of these universal elements or motifs is not embodied in some way or another by this sacred flower? Now, each of these cosmic themes is also connected to other symbolic forms, whether those be the sun, moon, fire, lightning, divine fish, divine boars, elephants, lion men, human incarnations, etc., etc. Yet the mythic roles of each of these symbolic creatures is enhanced by the light of a heavenly flower that shines upon their divine acts of creation and destruction, from above and from below. As the scriptures insist, all gods and mortals are born to the world at the will of Brahma, and all creatures emanate, like spokes to a wheel, from Brahma's pillared golden womb or golden wheel, everything to which they proclaim Hari Om. And so I ask our listeners, might these symbolic associations have something, anything to do with the fact that the same plant is the only symbol that represents a sage's experience of bliss, of transcendence, or of one's arrival to paradise? In a word, enlightenment. So connect the dots yourself. Might Hindu iconography and mythology have a bearing of some sort on the age-old question in Indian religious studies? Just what mysterious plant in India's prehistoric record could have possibly been responsible for the birth of the gods and of their sages' confessions to their ascendancy as gods, as immortal gods? As I mentioned in the Upanishads, to know Brahman is to be Brahman. Even though the present discussions only scratch the surface of Hindu mythology and iconography, every single tale and incarnation that we have covered in post-Vedic schools of Brahmanism are essentially derivative expressions of Vedic mythology and doctrine, which originated more than a millennium before classical Hindu perspectives on the Vedic pantheon were put to script. Now that we are aware of the prehistoric ritual practices that were involved in the partaking of a euphoric plant extract, and now that we are aware that the single plant involved in these rituals, soma, was an indispensable component for the achievement of religious ecstasy, it seems only reasonable to me that the sacred lotus might have something to do with the Vedas' great mystery. Well, I've been trying to make this case in our exploration of Brahmanic history, from prehistoric times to the present. Yet the roles and influences of the sacred lotus is not restricted to Brahmanic traditions alone. It turns out, for example, that the same plant was no less important to Buddhists and followers of the prophet Zarathustra among Zoroastrian communities of Iran and Central Asia. Wherever we encounter the sacred lotus in Asia, from the shores of the Caspian Sea to the Far East and Indochina, we will discover that competing religions adopted the same sacred plant to model their worldviews on cosmic order. So these traditions provide an opportunity to test my hypotheses regarding the identity of soma, based on botanical inquiries as opposed to linguistic studies. So for those that still have any doubts, let me recommend you to spend some time with our episodes on Buddhism and Zoroastrianism, For these too will reveal how the beaming light of India's golden flower also dispelled the darkness of ignorance and human suffering among distant lands and peoples on Paradise Earth.